So let's maybe give me a rundown of your travel from. I guess you left in April, didn't you?
Late March it was when I left. I got into Australia, I think March 23rd or something, and so obviously the first thing I had to do was my 2-week quarantine in Perth, which I was just with my family, my mum, my siblings. At that point, that quarantine it went by quickly because I had all my schoolwork to do at that point. So I had a lot of my assignments, a lot of my exams. So that 2 weeks was probably a good 2 weeks for me not to be able to do anything. So it made me focus on my schoolwork, which was still overhanging. And then as soon as that quarantine was done, Australia dealt with the virus really well, especially Western Australia. So Western Australia, pretty much by the time I finished my quarantine, which was a week into April, it was already looking pretty good. People weren't really wearing, there was people wearing masks, but nowhere near to kind of the extent here. And it's not because people didn't want to wear masks, it's because I think there's only 2 active cases in Western Australia. So very quickly in Western Australia did restrictions drop. Within Western Australia, I mean, there's still no travel allowed. There were kind of interstate borders. So if you lived in Perth, you wouldn't even be able to travel 2 hours outside of Perth for the first part. But by about May, June, everything seemed pretty normal. Restaurants had opened up again in May and June. I think it was like stage 4 in Western Australia, which meant that like 300 people could meet at once. And I mean, it's obviously gone really well in Western Australia now, because when I left Australia, the only restriction left in place was that the stadiums could only fill to, I think, 70% capacity instead of 100% capacity. So, I mean, even then, that's 50,000 people instead of 65,000 people. So it's not, yeah. Obviously, it's not too much of a worry over there for them, but obviously it's shown in Melbourne how quickly it can resurge and respike. So I think that's why Western Australia are really keeping their borders shut.
How about your early travel through the airports when you're going home? You're traveling right, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? So
that was probably the most nervous I was about everything. So in March, I guess there wasn't much, we didn't know about what was going on. And I had to fly from Halifax to Toronto to London Gatwick, then stay overnight in London, and then leave from London Heathrow Airport the next morning. So I was kind of terrified during those flights, because I thought I'm basically hitting, at that point, all the hotspots really. I mean, Toronto was kind of looking bad in March. London was looking dreadful, but I was surprised at how empty the airports. I was surprised at wasn't surprised at how empty airports were, but I was surprised at how almost little, especially in Heathrow in London, how little kind of security there was at the airports. I mean, because I have a British passport, when I went through Heathrow, I didn't even see a security guard face to face. It was all kind of through the e-passport gates and things like that. So that was weird. And I guess they obviously want to limit as much human interaction as possible. But I remember walking through Heathrow, which is, I think, in the top 5 busiest airports in the world, and just seeing it completely empty was really strange. I mean, it was nice I didn't have to wait for any time for my luggage to get through, but it was strange seeing Heathrow Airport like that. But then I was lucky that I got on the London to Perth direct flight, which is a new one they've only been doing for a few years. And I think it was a 17-hour flight, but I'd rather do that than have stopped somewhere else. And it's already a long flight, whatever it's going to be. So I think the less stopovers, the better. But yeah, it was strange just seeing how empty Heathrow was. On my flight in Toronto, actually, my gate was next to a flight that was going to Hong Kong. And it looked like something out of a Breaking Bad convention, because everyone was wearing these full hazmat suits. They had the goggles on, mask and everything. It was strange. I mean, I felt kind of underclothed at that point. So all I had was my mask and hand sanitizer and some gloves. But everyone on this flight to Hong Kong had the full hazmat suit and everything. It was quite weird seeing that.
Wow. So yeah, your quarantine is done in Perth. How quickly did you get into some training, or did you take a little time off?
So pretty quickly, actually. I was lucky that during my quarantine, I got an email from WACE, which is the Western Australian Institute of Sport, who I used to train with back when I was in Australia. And they emailed me, "Hey, look, we understand that you're back in Perth. Do you want some lane time?" And I was kind of surprised. I wasn't expecting any training for a while. And when I'd come back, I'd almost expected not to train. But Waste, we got special access to the pool. And basically for the first, in May, I was swimming basically one person a lane I did that for about 2 weeks. So Waste were really lucky that they got early access to the pool. And then by the end of May, things had pretty much opened up a lot more. So then I was actually able to put me with a squad. And I trained with a coach called Will Scott. And all of his athletes had kind of taken a lot of time out of the pool. And I think that with swimmers, especially myself, shoulders is a huge worry. And I think that when you take a lot of time out of the pool and you try and get back in quickly, it can really cause damage to your shoulders. So the first June, July was really just taking it slow, a lot of work in gym and rehab work on shoulders, and just making sure that our bodies were fine with swimming again after such an extended break. Because usually, I mean, when I was training in 2015-16, the longest I'd ever have out of the pool was 7 days. And that was like, if I got 7 days out of a pool, that felt like a lifetime. Like, I remember it was weird. You'd get back in the pool after 7 days and you try swimming again, and it almost feel like you've forgotten how to swim. I mean, I try to say, like, imagine not walking at all for 7 days. Like, just imagine just sitting or lying in bed and then walking again. It's weird. It's a strange feeling when you get back in. So I think after having like a month and a bit out of the pool, I could definitely feel my body like feeling a bit strange in the water, but by a week or two that was gone. I was lucky with Waste that I had access to such fantastic facilities.
So you went through 3 quarantines. You had a quarantine when you landed in Canada in July, and then now you're in your 3rd in Wolfville.
Yeah.
What have you been? How have you been occupying your time? That's 6 weeks now. You did mention doing some schoolwork in your first quarantine. Then you get one in Ottawa.
Yeah, I said I said that I'm become a bit of an expert at quarantines now. But the issue is the more quarantines you do, the harder and harder it is to get entertained, because the things you do to keep entertained, you've done in the first and the second one. So in the first one, I just fully focused on schoolwork. I'd see my family for the first time in 18 months. So any time with them was kind of a blessing. I was happy to sit and talk with them. The second one in Ottawa, again, coming back into Canada, there are a few things I need to get on top of. I'm president of the Business Society and the Players Association this year, so trying to get back on top of things with them. And then I'm doing an honors thesis as well. So I spent a lot of my time in Ottawa doing data collection for my thesis. And then just kind of, again, like I hadn't seen Josh for 5-6 months, so just enjoying my time hanging with him and his family. I've seen his family multiple times now. In my first reading week in my first year, I went to visit Ottawa and stay with his family, so it was good catching up with them. And then this one so far, again, more work on my thesis, spending time with Josh and Benito, but this one I feel is the hardest one so far. The other two, I always have my food cooked for me, laundry done. So quarantines weren't too hard when you're staying with a family, but this one, having to cook for yourself and getting clean, this one's been the toughest so far.
So try to conclude this little interview. What's the first thing you're going to do when you get out of that quarantine that you're in now in Wolfville?
Definitely get a haircut.
I kind of noticed the hair's a little long. That's the good thing about not having hair. You don't have to worry too much about it, but when you got a mop, it keeps growing. So
yeah.
Anyways, thank you very much for talking with us, and enjoy it. How many more days you got left?
6.
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, well, it'll soon be over. Anyways, thanks a lot, Guy, and hope to see you around campus.